Alright, this is my second take, my second attempt to make this shitty fucking video. Alright, so I kind of just want to give my first impressions, my thoughts after a day of letting it cook, of having seen the Chainsaw Man Reze Arc movie. And, going into this, I wasn't expecting to love it, but I was expecting to maybe be changed my opinion of initially not particularly being the biggest fan of the Chainsaw Man series. I read the manga up until the War Devil, what is Asa, whatever her name is, and I read up to her being introduced, and that's kind of where I stopped. And I was like, all right, I'm not gonna wait for this shit to be released every week or however every month or whenever. So I'm just gonna, call it quits here. I think I got enough of what I needed to from it, and I can make a safe judgment. Um, Now it wasn't for me, is what I kind of came out with, if you can't tell. But there were some things that I liked from it, things that I didn't like. But more or less, I felt like a little disappointed because going into it, I was expecting big things. I heard big things. Going into it, everybody was saying that it was the best thing ever. Fujimoto's the fucking genius, and people will still say that. Um, and I don't disagree that there's some things that he does really well. But again, coming away from it, I just did. I went from hating this to loving this. Usually, it's like maybe I'll be like, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it was, or actually, this isn't as good as I thought it was. Which is why usually I watch things more than once. And I try to take notes and write out my thoughts. Um, and so that's why I'm kind of staying away from scoring this. I'm definitely gonna log the movie, but I don't think I'm gonna give it a proper score. So just for the record, I was initially gonna wait until it came out on streaming for a rewatch, but I don't know if I'm that patient because that comes out in I think February. So I think I'm just gonna maybe sail the seven seas and potentially rewatch it and maybe give an update, maybe reassess some things, and we'll see. But I just want to kind of get out my thoughts. It's just gonna be a messy video. This is gonna be all these bullet points I wrote down straight from the theater, and we'll just go from there. Spoiler warning, go figure. Okay, so let's just start with everything that I really enjoyed about the movie. Um, so for starters, art direction is pretty fucking fantastic. Go figure again. Faithful to Fujimoto's kind of style, it just looks prettier in action, and especially on a high budget, high production value like this. Now I'm also should also note that I didn't watch the 12 episode series. I think I watched 2 or 3 episodes when it first released, and I just didn't like it. I thought it was not very good. Now, granted, this is coming off of the manga, so maybe I thought like oh this is just poorly executed. I don't know. I don't know what my thought was at the time, but I just for the record, I didn't finish the 12 episode series. Great art direction. The palette is really fucking pretty. Um, it has a sort of flatness to it that, combined with the mappa lighting, just gives it like a really nice aesthetic that is almost reminiscent to classic anime, but not quite. That mappa lighting, which the mappa lighting that I'm talking about, if you've seen Jujutsu Kaisen, any of the OPs, they have that kind of like weird, like I don't know how to describe it, where it's like light shining in from a fucking window, and you can kind of see all the little particles. That shit, whatever you want to call that. I feel like I saw a video recently, kind of giving it kind of like a kitschy name. So whatever you call that, it just really works in this art style's favor, in the palette's favor. The intro sequence was really fucking good. It uses pages from the manga and they just animated them. It's really well acted, uh, really well directed. Just overall looks really fucking cool. Sets up a good kind of suspense, mystery, and is also a good segue from what I'm assuming is the end of the anime. And it's good for people like me who haven't fucking seen the movie or seen the anime or read the manga in fucking years. And it's good for people who are just coming fresh off of it. If people want to go back and watch the show before they get into the movie. Overall, the voice acting was pretty solid. Uh, Nothing crazy from any of the male VAs. All the male VAs are pretty fine. Uh, if anything, there was more negatives than I had positives. Certain characters that I'll get into in a bit were a lot more grating than others. But the female cast, all of them were fucking fantastic. Reze's fucking fantastic. Makima, a little flat, but that's kind of her character, so it was still really good. Power, kind of annoying as well, but that's kind of her personality. She's kind of like a little fucking gremlin piece of shit. Uh, Kobeni, for the 10 seconds that we get her, was fucking great. She has a lot of passion and we're fucking crying. And I'm assuming she's like that in the anime, which, if there was any reason for me to go back and watch the anime, it would just to see Kobeni's performance. They do a really good job of kind of fucking around with lenses and angles. One shot in particular, there's a certain shot with they have a fisheye, and it just really makes something as simple as a walk cycle really pop out more and look more lively. And especially on a theater screen, it looks really fucking nice. Where it's kind of like this long shot that really just I don't know, I don't know how to describe it. It just looks really fucking good. The movie actually got a few chuckles out of me, which is kind of a surprise. Because I usually think that Chainsaw Man's dialogue is pretty cringe, and I know that's kind of on purpose given Dingy's character, where he's kind of like this pathetic, kind of immature loser. Specifically, the inner dialogue that Denji has, where he's kind of battling these romantic feelings for both Reze and Makima, it just kind of comes out like in such a childish way that kind of gave me. It reminded me of like a 90s to 2000s kind of teen comedy. It was just really well done. In general, a lot of the quirky side characters felt a lot more vibrant and alive in their own ways, and it just added to the overall world in ways that were somehow more interesting to me than the guy with the fucking chainsaw head. Like Beam, who I also enjoyed him in the manga a lot, but seeing him animated was like twice as enjoyable. And although he's not, you know, actually I shouldn't say that. I was gonna say he's not in the movie a lot, but that's kind of a lie. He kind of is. But in his human form, he's not really there a lot. But just seeing his little fin just kind of floating out of the ground was just I don't know, just something about it was so endearing. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for his acting or dialogue, which I find to be kind of grating. But it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, he's just a funny little shark guy. So yeah, he was pretty entertaining. I kind of liked that they relegated all the characters who weren't Denji and Reze or Aki and the Angel, to be fair. But aside from those four characters, everybody else was more or less the comic relief or kind of the brevity. Um, and I understand that Denji and Reze kind of had like kind of this goofy kind of back and forth. Uh, but that all felt like in character. Like it all felt like that was Denji's actual feelings, and it wasn't him trying to play jokes. Like it wasn't set up as a joke for the audience to be like, "Oh, that was a funny joke, haha." Whereas when Beam or Power or somebody else was on screen, you can kind of feel that there was like a cue there to be like, "Oh, that this is the joke." And with those four characters that I mentioned previously, it feels like they're just in their element. They're just in their world doing their things according to their personality. And it felt nice because it felt like the movie was specifically separating the two. And yeah, it was just really well done how they did that. There's this really cool villain who I don't really remember from the manga. And he's kind of just like a throwaway kind of character. But his introduction is really nice, where it's just this really unsettling and well lit kind of frame from behind, from like a door frame of like a bathroom, and you can hear all these sounds in the background with like the pipes and the water, and there's like weird voices that he's talking to, and you hear like a woman crying, and it was just really unsettling and really creepy, and I thought that was really well done. It's kind of a shame that he gets killed pretty fast, but his death at the very least serves a good purpose, and it kind of establishes how scary Reze is in that moment. And on that note, for most of the movie, I was kind of playing catch up and trying to remember what happened, and was testing my memory of the manga. Like, oh yeah, I remember this, and then oh, this is because this. And thankfully, they kind of answer a lot of my questions that I had. But when Reze kind of leads the guy up to the roof of the school and acts all scared, and then instantly kind of turns around and snaps his fucking neck, it honestly kind of caught me surprised because I was like, oh wait, I don't remember that part from the manga. And there's also kind of a cool little Easter egg I feel like where when she chokes him out and the camera kind of pans to her face in a really close zoom with like a turn, like kind of like an Evil Dead angle. Something about it was very reminiscent of like an Anton Chigurh kind of thing, which I feel is a nod to No Country for Old Men, given how Fujimoto has a weird reverence for Hollywood. Oh, speaking of which, Reze has a pretty fucking incredible transformation sequence into the Bomb Devil, and they really got their fucking bang for their buck because everything looks fucking fantastic and the transformation. Like you kind of see her arms kind of turn into like what looks like wires or something, and it's really cool how her fucking arms throughout the fights, her arms turn into like the missiles or the nukes. I don't know, something about it is just really cool. There's also a really fucking badass scene where she rips her head off and fucking tosses it like a bomb. That I'm pretty sure, now that I'm remembering, I think it is in the manga, but seeing it animated is just a lot more fucking unsettling and cool. Just yeah, they really did a good job of making her menacing and giving so much fucking impact to all of her explosions. Unfortunately, I wasn't the biggest fan of the whole kind of scene at the school or the whole kind of portion of the movie that takes place at the school. But with that being said, the initial interactions at the cafe and the phone booth, they all felt really cute, really organic, And especially because they kind of keep those cringy lines that I was alluding to earlier from Denji to a minimum, and they sort of play it as like a kind of fish out of water, kind of almost like the first Thor, where it's somebody who doesn't understand the norms of the society, and that girl was trying to kind of teach him to blend in as like a normal person. It's just really well done. They touch on something a lot with the whole city mouse and country mouse thing, and they hammer at it pretty repeatedly. But it kind of speaks to the core of Denji's identity with the whole him preferring the city mouse because of having fun and enjoying food, and it kind of is like it hammers to the point, like I said, about Denji being this kind of like pawn, this kind of easily kind of malleable tool in the grander story of being a devil hunter and being under Makima and whatnot. I don't know, it was just a nice little bit that I feel like, although on the nose, it's good enough. It serves its purpose. Oh yeah, I appreciate the gore a lot. It's been so long since I've seen an anime with gore that's on this level, and that's not to say it's the most violent thing ever. Like we're not getting 80s, 90s OVA levels of violence or gore, but they still fucking tear Denji into pieces like on two separate occasions where he's just a fucking torso. So I really appreciate that. Um, most of all, people are here really for the kind of the fight scene of between Reze and Denji, or Reze and kind of everybody, I guess, more or less. Um, and without going into what I didn't like, I'll just try to stay on the parts that I did for that fight. Uh, so first of all, it's kind of broken up into sequences, I guess, where at first it's between Denji and Reze, and that whole sequence is done really well, where she kind of like rips his heart out, and it's kind of like this betrayal. And although I didn't feel anything, because I kind of, like I said, I kind of already read the manga, so maybe it took me out a little bit, so I kind of knew what was coming. But I can imagine for somebody who's never seen it or never read the manga, I can see how that would be like a holy shit moment. But that whole scene where she first turns into the bomb devil and she kind of chases them down and Beam saves him, that was all done really fucking well. And they kind of there's this chase scene in the car with Aki, and it's just really well done. Albeit the really shitty CGI car with the fucking initial D, tracer lights. Uh, that was all done really well, and that was all fucking A1. However, actually, you know what? I'll just cut it there, and then I'll get into the negatives. For starters, this didn't really feel like a movie until the last, I guess, 30 minutes, the last 30 to 40 minutes of the movie. Otherwise, it just felt like a fucking extended episode. And this is kind of the problem I had with the JJK movie a little bit, where the JJK movie, again, just felt like a longer episode with a higher budget. Now, granted, it wasn't on the budget that fucking this movie had. This movie had a crazy budget, and if you've seen that last fight, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it felt kind of just like a bunch of broken up scenes from the manga that didn't flow well into each other, except for that last kind of act. And like from the Reze stuff into the last act is really where it only flowed. Everything else before that, like the stuff with Makima and all the stuff leading to it, it kind of just felt like, I don't know, just like I said, it just kind of felt like like an episode. Um, oh yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but I just didn't really feel much of an emotional response to anything because I kind of knew it was coming, so it was very hard to connect with the characters. Maybe that's just, again, maybe it's just because I read it. All right. Holy shit, the fucking music. Too much music. I didn't have a single moment to actually digest the scenes for what they were. Like even the really impactful moments, like where Reze is teaching him how to swim, I feel like it would have had a lot more impact if we had just a little bit to just kind of digest it without the fucking piano, the soaring pianos. Like, I understand it's like an emotional scene. I get that. But I would have liked it if the pianos came in a little afterwards. We got like a little bit of a montage of them swimming and it kind of played alongside. Um, but yeah, just the music was just like constantly fucking blaring. Again, maybe that's just a Mappa thing because it's the same shit in JJK. The most egregious example of the fucking music is that last 30 to 40 minutes, that last fight, where it's just constant noise and stimulation, just constantly blaring music and these fucking explosions every second. I felt like I was watching a Zack Snyder movie. Like, I'm serious when I say I started getting a headache about halfway through that last fight. Like, I just started fully zoning out. Like, Specifically that section with the Typhoon Devil and the skyscrapers, it was just peak overstimulation. It was just like boom, 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 fucking here's this destruction, and it's like, oh, just whole fucking buildings. And even though it was really fucking well animated, I couldn't even tell because it all just started to bleed together, and it was just this super choppy mess that was just like fucking a puke in my eyes. It was like impossible to follow for me. Maybe I need to watch it again and maybe I'll come to a different conclusion the second time around. But it was just like in theaters with the fucking like a crazy good sound system. I felt like I was gonna fucking puke. Like during that Typhoon Devil section, I felt like I was just disconnecting and asking myself, what the fuck am I watching? It's like a guy with chainsaw hands riding a shark into a fucking typhoon with like metal playing and explosions. I felt like I was watching a fucking Porygon Z Pokemon episode. Like I felt like I was gonna fucking seize up at any moment. Which I'm honestly surprised. As far as I'm aware, I didn't see an epilepsy warning because most people would be seizing up by this point. Like, there's one section in particular I remember where there's just like constantly like flashing lights, and it's just I feel like I had to close my eyes, like I had to squint because I felt like I was gonna die. Oh yeah, these last kind of bits of criticism aren't necessarily the movie's fault, just more or less the source material, the kind of narrative. But rewatching it or re-experiencing it through the movie kind of only hammered what I initially felt when I read it. Which is saying a lot because from what I remember, this was my favorite part of the whole manga. This and the without spoiling, the infamous door scene that they allude to at the beginning of the fucking movie. Now it's not the movie's fault, like I said. I just don't know how I feel about Denji, his motives for wanting to trust her. Like they're not bad, but I'm just not sure how I feel about him letting her go after she killed hundreds, maybe thousands of civilians. And especially because I feel like, unless I'm going crazy, I feel like there was a line where Denji said that he can't let innocent people get hurt or something. I could be wrong, but maybe I'm just making shit up in my mind. But it still feels a little bullshit to have this woman who almost kills you and your friends and hundreds of civilians and it just lets her go. Like, I understand the whole part about the manipulation and the self worth and, him not being able to muster the courage to hate somebody who shows him affection. But at some point, Denji's kind of culpable in the murder of all those people. And like Reze, there's a part where after they kind of wash up on the beach, Reze kind of hugs him again, like the first time they met. And right there, she could have tried to rip out his heart again, but he doesn't do anything. Again, I understand it's indicative of his trust for those that show him affection, but it's kind of just hard to believe at times. It's kind of hard to kind of suspend my disbelief that much. Another thing that's hard to believe is Rezi kind of just walks off casually, like she's just allowed to walk away. I guess you can say like everybody's busy dealing with the fucking aftermath of like 29/11s that just happened. And then she just shows up again later, just casually, and just gets sniped by Makima. And they try to kind of salvage her motives and reasoning by saying that she's like kind of a neglected orphan, very much like Denji. But I don't know, it just feels kind of tacked on near the end, and just didn't really matter to me by that point. I kind of was like taken out a little bit. Who knows? Maybe she'll come back later down the line or some shit. I know a lot of kind of anime series like to do that where they kind of revive a character, but I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm not caught up with Chainsaw Man, so I can't say if Fujimoto brings back characters, but you know, yeah, that's kind of all I really have to say about the movie. Um, like I said, if it wasn't clear by kind of what I kind of harped on the most, I don't love this movie, but I definitely don't hate it. It's just kind of firmly in the it was fine category. I'm not gonna score it officially because I think I need to watch it one more time before I actually score it. But if I were to right now give you a score, it's probably somewhere between a 6 or a 7, kind of like what I gave the initial series, the manga at least, where I gave it about a strong 6 to a light 7. Because there's a lot of stuff that I really do like, and overall, it is just a fine, passable piece of like entertainment. Like it's not mind blowing. I wouldn't call it an art piece or anything, but like man, just that entire section with the fucking music and the overstimulation just knocks it down. Like especially after having just seen Perfect Blue, the re-release for Western audiences. Holy fuck, it's like night and day how quiet and patient that movie is compared to this fucking constant blaring shit. Oh man, like I fucking when I walked out, I was like, I just took 20 Tylenol. I don't know. Not a bad movie, not a good movie. Yeah, those are just all my opinions. Leave a comment. about why you hate what I said, why you love what I said, why you agree, why you think I'm cool, why you think I suck. And yeah, peace.